It is a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of July. You step out of your car and walk into your house, expecting relief. Instead, the air feels heavy. Your central air conditioner has been running at full blast since 9 o'clock this morning, roaring out in the yard, burning through electricity. You check the thermostat in the hallway. You set it to 68 degrees, but the digital numbers blink back 76. It has not caught up, and it is not going to. Above your head, up behind the drywall in a space you avoid, the temperature is 140 degrees. Your roof is cooking, radiating a massive blanket of heat downward, crushing your expensive cooling system, and silently draining your bank account. Now I want you to sit with this. There is a roll of material you can buy at any hardware store that will drop the temperature of your attic by a genuine, measurable 30 degrees Fahrenheit in a single afternoon. It takes no electricity. It has no moving parts. It will not break down in 10 years. And it does not require a service contract. Your central air conditioning system has been losing the battle against your roof since the day your house was built. And the fundamental reason lies in a piece of basic physics that an entire modern building industry decided to ignore. My name is Dan Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My wife, Rebecca, and I have raised our children in a house that does not have a central air conditioner. We do not have a $6,000 unit humming outside our bedroom window. And we do not pay the electric company $300 a month for the privilege of sleeping through the summer. But our upstairs bedrooms stay cool, quiet, and comfortable, even when the August sun is beating down on the shingles like a hammer. We know how to keep a house cool because we have to. When you do not have a machine to hide behind, you have to understand how heat actually works. I am going to show you the method we use. And I am going to give you the exact science behind it. But before I go one step further, I am going to be plain and honest with you, the way my father was honest with me. Because there is a great deal of foolishness being sold on the internet right now, and I will not let you be fooled by it. You may have seen videos floating around claiming that a $30 roll of foil will drop your attic by 50 degrees, or a video telling you to nail a $4 sheet of wet cotton muslin to your rafters to cool the house. I will tell you straight, the internet is full of half-truths dressed up to get your attention. Real life does not work like a magic trick. The honest truth is this: to do a standard 1,000 square foot attic properly, you will not spend $30. You will spend about $150 on 3 good rolls of perforated foil. It will not drop your attic temperature by 50 degrees, but it will drop it by a solid, consistent 30 degrees. And that 30-degree drop will change the entire way your house feels. $150 to permanently break the heat radiating into your bedrooms. That is the honest math, and frankly, it is still the greatest bargain in the history of home building. I would rather tell you the honest limits of a thing and have you be pleased than sell you a miracle and leave you disappointed. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why your house is failing you. You will know the exact steps to fix it this weekend, and you will understand why the man who sold you your last roof desperately hoped you would never figure this out. Let me start with the physics, because once you understand this, you will never look at a roll of pink insulation the same way again. There are 2 different kinds of heat fighting to get into your house. The first is conducted heat. That is the heat that travels through direct physical contact. If you put an iron skillet on a hot stove and touch the handle, the heat that burns your hand is conducted heat. It moves through the solid material. For the last 40 years, the entire insulation industry has been obsessed with stopping conducted heat. They measure it with a number called R value. Every roll of fiberglass insulation has a big R value printed on it. R value is like a sponge. The thicker the sponge, the slower the heat moves through it. There is nothing wrong with R value. Pink fiberglass is a fine thing for stopping conducted heat. But here is the problem. The heat coming down from your roof on a summer afternoon is not primarily conducted heat. It is radiant heat. Radiant heat is completely different. It travels in straight lines through the empty air, exactly the way light travels from a flashlight. It does not need to touch anything to move. The sun's radiant heat hits your asphalt shingles. The shingles get blistering hot. That heat transfers to the wooden roof deck underneath. And then the underside of that wood deck acts like a giant radiator, beaming invisible waves of radiant heat straight down across the empty space of your attic, right into your ceiling joists, your air conditioning ducts, and the top of your bedroom drywall. Fiberglass insulation does almost nothing to stop radiant heat. It was never designed to. Expecting a roll of fiberglass to stop radiant heat is like expecting a sponge to block the light from a flashlight. The light just shines right through the holes in the sponge. Your fiberglass is sitting on the floor of your attic, soaking up that radiant energy, holding it, and eventually passing it right down into where your children are trying to sleep. To stop a flashlight, you do not use a sponge. You use a mirror, and that is exactly what the old builders knew. Every material on Earth has a scientific property called emissivity. Emissivity is just a number between 0 and 1 that tells you how much radiant heat a thing gives off and absorbs. My grandfather did not know the word emissivity, but he knew the principle in his bones. Drywall has an emissivity of about 0.9. Wood is around 0.9. Asphalt shingles sit at 0.95. They are massive sponges for radiant heat. They suck it in, and they blast it out. Aluminum foil, however, has an emissivity of 0.03. I want you to think about that number. A surface with an emissivity of 0.03 reflects 97% of the radiant heat that hits it. The same heat that drywall and wood absorb like a dry towel, aluminum foil simply bounces away. The engineers call this the emissivity cliff. It is not a 10% improvement. It is a 30 times improvement. If you put a thin, simple sheet of aluminum foil under your hot roof deck, 97% of the radiant heat coming off that wood hits the foil and bounces right back up and out of your attic vents. It never reaches the floor. It never reaches your fiberglass. It never reaches the ceiling of Rebecca's kitchen, where she is trying to bake bread on a Tuesday afternoon. Now let me address that viral video about nailing a wet cotton sheet to your rafters. A fellow online claims that the cotton soaks up moisture from the night air and releases it during the day, creating evaporative cooling that fixes your attic. I watched my English neighbor try this. He spent 2 hours up in the dust, hanging old bed sheets, thinking he had outsmarted the system. Here is why the math on that is nonsense. A square yard of cotton muslin holds about 30 grams of water before it starts dripping onto your ceiling. The radiant heat dumping off a hot asphalt roof pushes about 400 watts of energy into every square yard of your attic, every single second. If you do the math on the latent heat of vaporization, that wet piece of cotton will completely dry out in less than 3 minutes of direct radiant exposure. After 3 minutes, it is just a warm, dry rag hanging in the dark, doing absolutely nothing. Cotton absorbs heat. It does not reflect it. It is a folk remedy that sounds charming but fails the basic test of physics. I will not have you climb into a 140-degree attic in the middle of summer to hang a useless rag. The foil works because it does not rely on water. It relies on the permanent physical nature of aluminum to reflect radiation. It never dries out. It never runs empty. It just sits there and works for the rest of your life. So if the physics are so simple and the math is so absolute, why didn't the man who built your house put foil in the attic? Why did you inherit a sealed box of fiberglass that cooks you alive every August? The answer is what I call the illusion of the modern standard. And it is a story of how profit quietly pushed common sense out of the building code. Back in the 1930s and 1940s, foil-backed building paper was common. Builders understood that you needed one layer to stop the draft and another layer to reflect the heat. But in the 1970s, during the energy crisis, the fiberglass industry exploded in size. They had factories pumping out miles of pink and yellow fluff, and they needed to sell it. They put millions of dollars into lobbying the committees that write the national building codes. They pushed for a standard that focused entirely on R value, the exact metric where fiberglass wins, and radiant barriers are ignored. By 1980, the building codes were rewritten entirely in the language of R value. Nobody held a secret meeting in a dark, smoke-filled room to ban aluminum foil. It was quieter and much more effective than that. They simply created a test that the foil was not allowed to take. If the code inspector only walks in with a clipboard, looking for an R30 rating, the builder is only going to buy the pink fiberglass that gives him that number. Contractors stopped carrying foil because their estimating software did not account for it. And a quiet, highly profitable alignment happened across the rest of the industry. The shingle manufacturers realized something. An attic without a radiant barrier runs at 140 to 150 degrees. That trapped heat bakes the asphalt shingles from underneath. The oils dry out, the granules fall off. And a roof that should last 30 years curls and dies in 15. You have to buy a new roof twice as often. The roofing industry was certainly not going to complain about an attic that destroys their product on a faster replacement cycle. Then you have the FAC industry. If your attic is beaming radiant heat into your house, your central air conditioner has to run an extra 3 to 4 hours a day just to hold the line. The compressor works harder, it burns out sooner, and you end up handing an extra $80 to $100 a month to the electric company. It is not a conspiracy. It is just an ecosystem of companies making a great deal of money off the fact that your house was built wrong. And my people, who do not buy 30-year shingles, who do not own central air conditioners, and who do not pay the electric company, looked at that system and quietly walked away. We build with the mirror, not just the sponge. Now, before I tell you how to install this, I must address the two fears the industry loves to whisper into homeowners' ears to keep them buying fiberglass. The first fear is that a radiant barrier will cook your shingles. The contractor will stand in your driveway, shake his head, and tell you that bouncing the heat back up will fry your roof and void your warranty. I will tell you straight. That is a myth, and the government has proved it. The Department of Energy and the Florida Solar Energy Center did massive multi-year field studies on this exact claim. They put sensors on roofs across the hottest parts of the country. Do you know what they found? A radiant barrier only increases the temperature of the shingles by 2 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. If your roof is sitting in the blazing sun at 190 degrees, an extra 4 degrees is not going to cook anything. It does not damage the asphalt, and it does not void the warranty of any major shingle manufacturer in America. Do not let a salesman scare you away from physics. The second fear is the winter penalty. Some folks will tell you that if you block radiant heat in the summer, you will also block the sun's warmth from helping to heat your house in the winter. I am a man who respects the truth, so I will acknowledge this honestly. Yes, there is a small winter penalty. If you live deep in Canada, or in a place where it snows 9 months out of the year, the foil might cost you a few dollars in winter heating. But if you live in Texas, Florida, California, or anywhere the summer heat makes you miserable, the math is entirely on your side. The money you save on air conditioning in July will pay for the winter penalty 10 times over. Here is exactly what you need to buy, and exactly how you put it up. I will tell it slow, and I will be specific, because the details are the difference between a house that cools down and a house that grows mold. You need to buy perforated radiant barrier foil. Let me say that first word again, perforated. It must have tiny microscopic pinholes punched all the way through it. This is the absolute paramount safety rule of this entire project. Your house produces moisture from cooking, from breathing, from the bathrooms. That moisture rises into the attic. If you install a solid, unperforated sheet of foil, the moisture will hit the foil, condense into water, and rot your roof deck. Perforated foil allows the water vapor to pass harmlessly through and out the attic vents while still reflecting 97% of the heat. Never ever put a solid vapor barrier on the underside of your rafters. Look for a roll that specifies it meets the ASTM C13,000 standard. A standard roll covers about 500 square feet and costs somewhere around $50 to $60. For a typical 1,000 square foot attic, you will need 2 or 3 rolls. Add in a heavy-duty staple gun, a box of staples, and a utility knife. Your total cost will be right around $150. You are going to do this job early in the morning. I am talking about 6 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun is coming up. Do not climb into an attic at 2 in the afternoon in August, unless you want to meet your maker early. Wear a long-sleeve shirt, gloves, and a good dust mask. The foil itself is clean, but the old fiberglass dust floating around your attic is miserable to breathe. When you get up there, you are going to staple the foil to the underside of the wooden rafters. You are creating a tent of foil just beneath the roof. Here's secret number 1. The shiny side must face down. Most foil has one side that is incredibly bright and shiny, and another side that might have printing or a duller finish. The shiny side must point down toward the floor of the attic. Why? Because over the next 10 years, dust is going to blow into your attic through the vents. If the shiny side is facing up toward the sky, dust will settle on top of it. Dust has a high emissivity. If your foil gets covered in dust, it stops being a mirror and turns back into a sponge. By facing the shiny side down toward the floor, gravity prevents the dust from settling on the reflective surface. It will stay clean and keep working for 50 years. Here is secret number 2, the air gap. This is the step that separates the men who understand physics from the men who are just wasting staples. You must leave a gap of empty air, at least 1 to 2 inches, between the foil and the wooden roof deck above it. You do not want the foil pressed tight against the wood. If the foil physically touches the hot wood, the heat transfers through conduction, not radiation. Remember the skillet on the stove? If the foil touches the wood, it bypasses the emissivity magic entirely. By stapling it to the bottom edges of the rafter beams, you naturally create a perfect 3 to 4 inch channel of empty air between the wood and the foil. The wood radiates heat across the air gap. The foil acts as a mirror, and the heat bounces back. Start at the bottom, near the edges of the roof, and run your foil horizontally across the rafters. Staple it every few inches to keep it taut. When you start the next row higher up, overlap the foil by 2 or 3 inches. Do not worry about taping the seams. It does not need to be airtight. It just needs to be a continuous shadow of reflection. When you get to the vents in your roof, just take your utility knife and cut a square around them. Let the house breathe. If you have recessed lighting canisters poking up through your attic floor, make sure the foil stays at least 3 inches away from the wiring to avoid any fire hazards. You and a friend can staple an entire attic in about 3 or 4 hours. By 10 in the morning, you are climbing down the ladder, brushing the dust off your jeans, and taking a shower. That same afternoon, when the sun is at its absolute peak, I want you to go stand in the hallway, under the attic access. You are going to feel a profound, silent difference in the weight of the air. The oppressive, heavy blanket of heat that usually presses down on the second floor will be broken. Your air conditioner will shut off, cycling normally instead of running in a desperate, endless marathon. Rebecca noticed it. The very first day, we installed the foil barrier in the summer kitchen, where she cans vegetables. The room went from a sauna to a shaded porch. I want to take a moment here, because this is the part that truly matters. And it is bigger than just keeping a bedroom cool. We have allowed a system to be built around us that demands our total dependence. We have been convinced that the only way to solve a problem is to plug a machine into a wall and pay a corporation to keep it running. The modern standard of building a house is not designed to make you self-reliant. It is designed to make you a subscriber. You subscribe to the electric company. You subscribe to the whack repairman. You subscribe to the roofing manufacturer who promises you 30 years, but knows you will be back in 15. The Amish way of life is often misunderstood by the outside world. People look at my buggy or my lack of a power line and think I am rejecting progress. But I am not rejecting progress. I am rejecting the leash. We refuse technologies that force us to depend on strangers in office buildings who do not care if our children sleep well or if our crops fail. We embrace the technologies that make us capable, independent, and free. A roll of aluminum foil is a piece of brilliant modern manufacturing. But when you use it to permanently cut your reliance on a massive power grid, you are applying the oldest and most stubborn philosophy my people have. Fix it once with your own hands, and never pay a toll to a stranger for something the laws of nature can do for free. So here is what I want you to do. This weekend, set your alarm for 6 in the morning. Put on some old clothes, grab a flashlight, and climb up the pull-down stairs into your attic. Look around. Look at the pink, fluffy fiberglass piled on the floor, doing nothing to stop the invisible heat raining down from the roof. Look at the dry baking wood above your head. Feel the heat already gathering. Then climb down. Go to the hardware store and bypass the insulation aisle. Find the rolls of perforated radiant barrier. Buy 3 of them. Buy the staples. Do the work. And then, I want you to come back here and tell me in the comments exactly what happened. Tell me what state you live in, and tell me how many hours your air conditioner used to run, compared to how many hours it runs now. If you are one of the people who already figured this out and installed foil a decade ago, tell the new folks reading this exactly the temperature drop you measured. I read every single one of these comments, and the shared knowledge in that section is stronger than any advertising budget the fiberglass industry could ever muster. Next time, I am going to show you how my grandfather built the foundation of this house to keep the cellar bone dry through 100 years of torrential spring rains, using nothing but gravel, a shovel, and the natural slope of the earth. No sump pumps, no French drains that clog, and not a single drop of electricity. It is the natural next step to taking your home back from the grid. Until then, stay cool, do the math yourself, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.